right. So I'm going to get started. One thing I do want to say is that I'm at my family home right now in Maryland. I go back to New York tomorrow, and so, or over the weekend. But right now, where I am in this conference room, there's people playing pool outside. So if you can hear them, I apologize. I'm going to just speak up and be as loud as possible. But thank you again for joining me for a conversation on race, a very diverse conversation, a very uncomfortable conversation, but a conversation that is so important right now. Um, you know, having uncomfortable conversations helps us grow, further understand, and learn from each other. There's no better time than right now to do this. So again, thank you for being brave and for being honest. Over the past few days, as we've watched what is occurring and unfolding in our country, we've shared our opinions, taken action, and shared ways to contribute to effective change. I believe this conversation has the ability to do the same. Although racism and racial issues have been around for somewhat 400 years now, with the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, who would have been 27 today, and happy birthday to her, and George Floyd, we have seen an uproar in response to continual police brutality, and we are saying that we've had enough. We are reminding for some and realizing for many that we are too easily killed. That to be Black in America means that you can be freely jogging and be killed. You can be sleeping in your own home and be killed. You can be just going about everyday life and be killed. So it was Sunday night that my best friend Kajal asked me if I was still awake, asking if I had advice for how to email her colleagues at work. Monday morning, I awoke to this and we discussed it for a little bit. But we realized, after being friends for nearly 10 plus years, as a friend and as a sister, we've never discussed this issue. I told her about my idea to have a full conversation. I wanted to create an opportunity for change to occur in dialogue. So here we are, and I'm so grateful for you all, so let's get started. Just a few agreements and few ground rules for tonight's conversation. Number one, when you talk and when you share your opinion or your perspective or your experiences, I just ask that you first introduce yourself, say where you're from, and then go about. Number two, be curious and listen to understand. Number three, show respect and suspend judgment. Number four, know any common ground as well as differences. Speak from your own experiences. Number five, be authentic and welcome that from others. Number six, be purposeful and to the point. And number seven, own and guide the conversation. Even though I'm the moderator and the mediator, I would love for you guys to guide it as well. If you have other questions that bounce off of other ones, feel free to just move with the flow and go for it. So as we approach our first section, I'm titling this Our Experiences. Growing up with racism, growing up with privilege, and existing right now. Number one, what is it like being African American in the United States? What have your experiences been growing up?
Okay, my name is Natalie, and I am from South Jersey. And that's kind of the reason why I feel to speak up, because where I'm from, like, racism has been like a big part of like my life growing up. Like, it's always been something that's kind of like around. And because, like, I think because it was so casual for a long time, I didn't even realize what it was. Like, it took for me leaving and going to New York and being around different people from different places and like kind of comparing experiences. I was like, oh wow, like a lot of fucked up stuff happened. Like, you know what I mean? While I was growing up, like I was called like the N-word with a hard R in high school, like to our faces for no reason. You know what I mean? And nobody did anything about it. Nobody got in trouble. We had to take it to the superintendent for something to get done. And like, even then he was like a repeat offender. Like, just like the farther south you get, it's the worst. Like, I remember my sisters, we went on vacation down to like South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and we were in the pool that's like connected to like the hotel or whatever. And I heard like a little girl say like, ew, there's black people in the pool, and like ran and got out like when my sisters were in the pool. And I was like, holy shit, like that was like from the mouths of babes, you know what I mean? So I think that it's like something that happens, it's something you're subjected to, like regardless of where you're at or who you are or where you're from. But for some people, because of their environment, they may or may not know that they're like being treated that way. So I think that's kind of where a divide happens within ourselves, is that some people aren't like caught up.
Anyone else want to share? This doesn't have to just be one person for each question.
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm from Long Island. So LI is known for being a very segregated place in America. It's not known for anything else. We're not cool. But I've experienced racism all over the place. I mean, I've been pulled over. I live in a very like Jewish neighborhood, so like my existence is very unique. But I think like my earliest memory was, I think, in elementary school we were given instruments to play in like either band, orchestra, or chorus, whatever it was, and all of the kids of color got pushed into either band or chorus, and then all of the white kids got pushed into string instruments. So I I like they even asked us like, what do you want to play? And I was like, the violin. And they said, no, well, I mean, are you sure you're there? No, I didn't know what that meant. So when I got to the class, I was like, oh, it's for the browner gotcha. And so my mom took note of this. She called the school and everything, and it was a fun conversation about how you can't segregate based off of the instruments. And it was just my first introduction to really understanding my place, especially in Long Island, where again, like I know Newsday came out with this article called Long Island Divided, in which they describe to us just how real estate agents try and divide the places up. Like, Hampton is for this group of people, or so like just certain areas are for certain colors. And I live in a very white one, so I'm kind of an anomaly. But I think moving forward, Long Island, I mean, my parents couldn't drive on the road today because of the protests that were just happening, causing traffic. I think people are actually speaking up finally and trying to kind of grasp what Long Island is. And I'm trying to be a little more a part of that.
I'll also say that I've seen Corey and I've heard Corey play the violin. He is amazing, like out of this world.
Do not hype me up. Don't do that. No, don't do that.
I'm going to do that. I'm just saying. Anyone else want to comment about this question? And for those joining us, the question was, what is it like being African American in the United States? What have your experiences been growing up?
So hi guys, I'm Abby and I'm from Virginia. I grew up in Southern Virginia, and like I believe your name is Natalie when you mentioned like the further south you go. So I grew up in like backwoods Virginia, and I lived in an area where it is very segregated. Like we're known that like if you live in a certain part of town or if you live across the tracks, you're either hood or you're affluent if you live on the other side of town. And people just kind of knew that in high school. That would be something that was always said, oh, you're too good, you live on this side of town, so oh, you think you're better than everyone. And I believe I was like 16, 17, and I was on a date with a white guy, and we were like driving to a restaurant, and I believe like he stopped right outside the restaurant, and he was like, I was kind of looking at him kind of confused, and I was like, oh, are we gonna go inside? And he was like, no, like I don't think we're gonna go in because I don't really want my friends to see us. And I was like, oh, okay. That was like the first time I'd ever experienced like just being, well, I'd say like a secret. That was like the first time I was like, oh wow, is it really? Because that was the first time I'd really experienced something like that, where I was like, okay, well, this is an issue for me. And like to be exposed to it at 16, 17 years old, it was, kind of a shock for me.
So I want to open this question in a way up for everyone else just to share what their growing up experiences were like with their own race, whether it was that they experienced privilege or they didn't experience that. And did you notice your privilege, or did you notice the way that you were being treated? Was it something that you were taught growing up about you are different, so you need to acknowledge that? Or was it something that you kind of bypassed for a while and didn't think about?
Hi guys, my name is Emma. I'm from California, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in a pretty diverse community. And I think one of the more eye-opening experiences I had recognizing my privilege was when I was a little bit older. And my brother lived in Arkansas for 2 years. He played baseball down there in college. And I went to visit him, and I was talking to one of his friends, and we were walking. And I heard her mutter something under her breath. And she said interracial under her breath. And I was confused. I said, "What do you mean by that?" And my brother said that she points out every interracial couple that she sees. And that was like so jarring for me. I had never really experienced the blatant sort of acknowledgement of something that I didn't even bat an eye at. I didn't even notice that they were nearby. It was so eye-opening, and it was shocking. And I always think back to that point, and not that it's that can happen everywhere, as we're seeing. It's happening in Minneapolis, it's happening, in San Diego. There's instances happening everywhere, but I think being in the South too, it was very prevalent. And it was, it was just, I still don't really have words for it because I was just shocked. And it was very frustrating for me because she talked about how much she was a sports fan, and she would attend all these sports games and be a diehard sports fan. And it's frustrating when a lot of the players and athletes on the field are people of color, African American, people from other countries. And she, the way that she supports sports versus the way that she lives her life in general, don't align, so that was very frustrating for me. And that's just one instance that comes to mind. But I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the conversation, and I told Gabby that I really just want to sit back and listen and sort of hear from all of you and learn and be as much of a sponge as I can in this conversation.
Thank you, Emma.
Hey guys, I'm Kajal. I grew up in Olney, Maryland. I grew up with Gabby. I've known her since middle school. I'm also Indian, or my parents are from India, and they immigrated here in around the 80s. I also really agreed with what Natalie said earlier about how you don't really realize what your own experience is like until you're in a new environment. I didn't realize how not diverse Olney was and not diverse Montgomery County was until I went to college. And that was my first exposure to more people who were Indian, more people of different ethnic backgrounds in general. Our high school, our middle school, my elementary school, they were all very heavily, it was mostly white populations that were there. And growing up, I obviously am part of a minority that is more privileged than the Black community. My parents got to immigrate here. They haven't been systematically oppressed like the Black community is. And so while I wasn't really discriminated against in that way, I did know that I was different than the white community in our schools and everything like that, just by how my parents raised me, whether it was because they're just strict parents or just Indian parents, whatever you want to kind of label it as. But they told us really firmly, you can't do the same things that someone who's from a white family can do. You can't go out, do whatever you want, or do XYZ. But I think the first time I really realized how different our community is versus the rest of the world is when I went to college. And really got to experience just different ethnic backgrounds in general. I realized that our town is very white and not diverse at all, which is really sad because you don't get to kind of experience the benefits of having a diverse community when you're younger. And I think that lets you have better experiences, makes you more open to different experiences, and also teaches you a lot as a person and helps you grow more as a person overall. But yeah, just wanted to add my 2 cents in. Gabby, thank you also for letting me join this today. And I'm also just happy to sit back, listen in, chime in when necessary.
Thank you all for who have shared already. I really appreciate you all. And my next question has to do with something that happened this week. I just want to hear everyone's thoughts and ideas and perspectives on Black Tuesday. Did you think it was successful? Do you think it was effective? Do you think it was needed? And for those who don't know what Black Tuesday was, because I know that not everyone's on social media, it was really a movement decided by some Black music industry leaders who said that for a whole day, African American people should not, stream music, should not purchase things and move forward in that sense of things, but they should share information, continuing to be, outreach focused. And so a lot of people, it came down to this thing where everyone was posting a Black square on their Instagram page or on their Facebook page and saying hashtag Black Tuesday or hashtag Black Lives Matter. And the issue that arose was that when people were hashtagging Black Lives Matter, that hashtag was becoming crowded and overwhelmed with Black squares instead of all of the different resources that had been spread and given about in the last week or so about creating change, about protesting, about signing petitions. So it was kind of hectic to see how everyone was feeling about that and how to move forward from it.
So I think, I kind of mentioned it to you like that morning, how I felt about the Blackout Tuesday. So while I understand the reasoning behind it, kind of like to piggyback off what you said, I feel like it just blocked people from accessing the information that they needed. It blocked a lot of pertinent and resourceful information. And I understand that people wanted to be a part of it, but let's say, for instance, there's somebody that came on social media that day and wanted to sign a petition or wanted to look for some information. They wouldn't be able to easily access it just by clicking the hashtags because all you saw was just Black squares, so it, like you said, just drowned out all of the information.
Hi, I'm Nikki. So yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying. I originally, when I woke up that morning, I participated in it. And then as I started reading more things and I started listening to what people were talking about it, I deleted it because I realized it was almost doing the opposite, and it was drowning out Black voices. And I felt that it wasn't resulting in what should be happening. I felt that I was having trouble finding resources because there's so many Black pictures on Instagram, and I felt like it had the opposite result. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Hi, I'm Kadeem from Brooklyn. So I think that for the when it comes to like the Blackout Tuesday, like what's happening this week, I think this was like a good example of what happens when things get like really trendy. Obviously, like social media is like it's very accessible by like basically like the whole world. If you have technology, then you basically have social media. But I think like the problem comes when it's like people think like, okay, I'm just posting.
Does anyone want to share another point until he's able to reconnect?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, when things like this happen, I feel like because this is like not the first time and it's like the 4th or 5th, you kind of just start to recognize these things when they start happening. Because like it's happened when like each of the deaths, like every time there's a big movement like this, I saw it and I couldn't find a reason. I didn't know that it was for the music industry either. I couldn't find a reason, so I didn't participate because just like you have to stay informed and you have to pay attention to things. You don't just do things because they're trendy. But it exposed a lot of people for sure, because of course it could be just so simple as to post a Black picture you can archive later when nobody's looking, like, and it came from people that were mostly silent. And now I feel like, I mean, good things came out of it, in a sense of like a lot of brands did like do a lot that day, like a lot of websites were like blacked out and you couldn't get things done. So I guess in some small way there was a benefit, but what I mainly saw on the internet was that like protesters who needed to communicate with each other through social media couldn't get through to one another. And I was like, well, now this is just straight up dangerous because all you see is all these Black images.
Very true. Kadeem, if you want to, if you're back, if you want to start back with
Can
your,
you guys hear me?
we're good.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So I was just saying, things get like really dangerous. I feel when people feel like they can just like post the Black square and like the work is done, because it's like, and then also when it comes to like people who like have been like donating and like spreading awareness and things like that, it's like yeah, you can do that, but like as long as you like keep doing what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? Like I keep seeing like memes that say like keep your foot on the gas, like yeah, keep your foot on the gas, social media I feel like is like makes things like very palatable, but like I think that my real concern is that like things continue to like move in the direction that we're going.
To tag off Kadeem, there's been a lot of these well-intentioned virtual movements where people they have an idea that like if I post this hashtag or if I do this thing, I'm spreading awareness and the job is done, going home. Like I've closed out my Instagram for a little while. When I came back, people had tagged me in like the Insta story, like, tag your friends if they believe Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, I'm not really sure what I'm to take from this, because I know I do for obvious reasons. So I was like, I don't know what to do with this tag right now. And I understand that it comes from a place of actual like people obviously care, people are worried, people are concerned. And there's so many of these little virtual movements, but this was one where I was just so confused because I'm seeing 1,000 Black squares and no information. It's almost as if you like put a halt on everything.
Gabs, I have a question, kind of going off of Kadeem's point. So something I've been struggling with is like when you do something, right? Like on one hand, if you post it, you're spreading awareness, but then I also feel like sometimes people are posting it for like the appearance of being supportive, or that if you're doing it quietly, like does that take it away because you're not posting it? Like I just feel like the line between like advocacy and supporting gets a little bit tricky when it comes to social media, because your intention matters when you do things like that and you don't know what it is. So I don't know if anyone has any kind of insight on what you think, about like posting like, oh, I donated this to, this organization, like how people feel about that.
Just really quickly, I feel like the positives of speaking up about it kind of outweigh the negatives. The positives would be that you're inspiring someone else to donate, to kind of like support in their own way in whatever way they can. While the negatives are just like, you take away that positivity. You're not really expressing yourself. But also, I think it's also completely fine to donate and not be as super verbal as a lot of people are. But showing support, I think, is also so important.
I was gonna say, hi, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jamila, I'm from the Bronx. And what I feel about social media now is that I think that people have to really think about their own like ethics and morals when it comes to like social media, because I think I know for me, and I can only speak for myself, like I feel like in the past I've always kind of posted information or in support of the Black lives that were taken, but I think that at a certain point it felt a little performative, and not for myself but just for the people that I know, and then that made me start to question really kind of just like the people around me, the things that they would post and like what their true intentions were. So I think that sometimes it's like your intentions and you can kind of fade into the background and support in different ways, and it doesn't need to be this like social media charade and performance. And then there's other times where there's people who they feel like, okay, I can post and then I can go about like my regular life and continue on, and it's just for the moment, for appearances. So I think, speaking for myself, like I'm at a place now where I'm not really trying to use social media to speak out, and I'm trying to use the information that's shared to kind of do my part in the background. And, you know, just in my everyday life, supporting Black businesses, supporting brands that support us, you know, speaking out, having conversations in real life, and really kind of taking a step back from everything that social media is, because after a while it gets exhausting. I can only speak as a Black person when I say that. So I think that's kind of where I stand on things.
You really hit the nail on the head, at least for me, because I felt that way these past couple of days. I'm battling between, like, in one sense, I feel like I'm obligated to like say stuff and be vocal and like post and do things. But on the other hand, I'm like, I do this. I've been saying this shit every day. Like I do this every day.
I've been about this shit.
I've been saying this like January, February, March, April. I don't ever stop talking about this. So I don't feel now. I've decided that I don't feel pressure to jump in with y'all. Y'all jumping in with me just for now. Like that's more of what this relationship feels like. And whatever positives we can take from that, including your money, because it's going to a good place at least, you know, I mean, is great. So I think that people just have to decide for themselves how they want to use social media to be beneficial, because even Maria, I'm going to shout you out, has been so vocal on social media in the DC area. Like the infographic you put out, like those kinds of things are necessary, you know, like you're making it for a specific group, like, you know, to get people out there, and like social media is a way to spread awareness. So it works in both ways, but I do feel that's the relationship I have, at least with it. I'll take what I can get. ATM.
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick? Oh, sorry. Someone going.
It's okay. You want to go?
I'll go really quickly. I'm Ariel. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I currently am supposed to be living in Boston, except for COVID. But I will say that, so I work in a all-white office. I'm a doctoral student in clinical psychology, so I was planning on just chiming in during the mental health question, but I think it's important just to at least mention this, that it wasn't until I went on social media and said something that any of my coworkers, any of my cohort members said anything to me. And I was very careful and selective, because you know, I see patients and things like that, and I wanted to make sure that whatever I said was reflective of my opinions, and balancing that in itself has been really, really tricky to like not offend anyone and not do anything too extreme. But I will say that even with Blackout Tuesday, it just was kind of, I posted this post of like, your silence is deafening. And it was kind of like all these people wanted to then chime in and tell me how they were so sorry and so much guilt and blah, blah, blah. And to some extent, I was like, okay, enough with that. But it was interesting though, because I feel like while we are still trying to figure out what social media can do and how there are so many kinks in using social media to get platforms across, there still is some power, because I recognize I went to an HBCU, so most of my timeline is filled with Black people and Black content, but that is not the case. And so I would wager that for many of my coworkers, I was the only person on their timeline that would have said something. And so I think there's so many flaws with social media. I'm not at all dismaying that, but I think that there is still some power when your timeline starts to impact someone else's. I think then you can start to see that there's some like change in the meter. Did I appreciate all their text of sadness? Not really. And I was kind of like, okay, well, like, here's your resource for like what you can do today. Like, go sign a petition, go donate some money, go do something helpful, instead of telling me how sorry you are that you won't ever understand. But I felt like at least they're aware of it, because there are still people, I would wager, in this country right now who are like, yeah, I don't really get the big deal. So that's just my thing.
Yeah, definitely. To kind of go off of that, I agree that you really, before you post, you have to make the conscious decision about what it is that you want your post to accomplish. Like, I feel like social media is so grounded and ingrained in likes and follows and shares that it becomes like a place where, you know, you just do it for a trend. But I think that, like, obviously being social aware, being anti-racist, these are not trends at all. These aren't fads or things that are just gonna like emerge, like different trends that we see and have seen in the social media platforms and everything. But I feel like before you make a post or anything, you kind of have to decide, like, am I utilizing my platform as a resource for others, or am I exploiting it as a flex? Because I feel like that performative aspect is so a part of social media that it's hard to kind of separate from it.
I like just kind of piggybacking off of that. I think one thing that this has kind of like shown us is that like yes, social media does spread awareness, but awareness is really not the same thing as like education. And I think that in this instance, like the why is very important because like we've all been saying, social media is very trendy and it's so easy to just like retweet or it's like just like share something. But I think that when you know like why you're doing something, why are you donating, why are you sharing this post, like what is the context behind this? I think that like if people really take the time to do that, which I definitely believe it's like a personal responsibility. I definitely think that if more people did that, it would, I think it definitely like speaks to the compassion within a person, and it's like, okay, well, and like the empathy, so you're able to like put yourself in that person's shoes more, as opposed to like, oh, this person's doing it, I should probably do it too, you know.
If I may say one more thing, I definitely agree with that too, because I saw a post the other day. I was talking about this on my Instagram too, and somebody just posted a black square, and I saw so many black squares, and in the comments, you can kind of tell where that black square was going. Like people were just posting it to be like, oh, I agree, I'm not racist, let me post a black square. And the people in the comments of that post that I saw were like, you don't have to put Black Lives Matter because it's already intended, it's insinuated. But I was looking at it like, if Black Lives Matter is intended, if that really was insinuated, then all these victims of police brutality would still be alive. Like, if Black Lives Matter, if you didn't have to say it and you didn't have to keep asserting it over and over and over again, we wouldn't even be having these issues.
Very, very powerful things said. I'm just taking it all in, and I really appreciate what you guys have all said. So that it's amazing. The last question in this section is really about what we're doing to exist right now. If anyone's been at a protest, whether peaceful or unfortunately violent, or just how we are coming into this place, how are we standing in what we're experiencing?
I think for me, I was kind of feeling lost in the sense of what to do there too. Because the closest city I'm next to is Philadelphia, and when things started popping off there, like I didn't even know what was happening until I saw it on the news. And I kept myself home because I have 2 children that I have to care for, and it's like I feel, and with protest is the thing is that like it's scary for me to even want to be there because I know that like out of everyone here, I'm probably going to get hit. Like that's what the thing that it is. It's like a huge risk for Black people to go to these protests, which is why it's so profound. But like, it's really scary because if somebody snaps, it's me getting hit. They're going to grab me even if I'm not doing anything. You see the videos on Twitter, you know, where like people have their hands up and they're doing what they're supposed to do and they get maced in the face or they get like whacked with batons. Like that's insane. And I was too afraid to risk myself knowing that they were here and, you know, young, and just I just couldn't go out like that for them. But I think as far as like what I'm trying to do, what I've stumbled into is kind of going like head to head with a community that I was once a part of and allegedly well respected in at my college, which is like the Greek community, because for years I didn't say anything because I was afraid of how people were going to treat me or, you know, like how I was going to be viewed from that point on. But I just figured like, if we're going to call shit out, like then let's call shit out. Like, let's call everybody out. And like, for me, that was what that meant. And that has been consuming almost all of my time, and just taking time to reach out to other people in that community who are now like speaking out and like realizing how like messed up things are. I've had so many people reach out to me asking me what they should do or how can they be more helpful, or other Black people reaching out just being like, how are you, because I'm like in distress. So I think just trying to face it all, because I could just easily, you know what I mean, like delete like Twitter or like not pay attention to it, but I'm trying to really be active in constantly bringing it up and constantly making it the topic of conversation and just calling it out when I see it without hesitation.
I want to bounce off of what Natalie said, especially when you talked about the riots going on in Philadelphia. My name is Kiara, by the way, and I live outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs. And when they first started the protest, it was supposed to be at the art museum, and there was two different ones. There was one at the art museum and then one at City Hall. And my older sister and I, we were going to go, but then she called me and she was like, Key, are you sure you really want to do this? She was like, I need you to understand something. You know, if we get separated, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're going to be on your own. It's like every man for themselves. So, like, you have to be ready. Like, you got to go in expecting the worst and, you know, not the best. So, like, that was just a really real moment for me. And I kind of felt like really bad that I couldn't go out there, because I really wanted to do it, because, you know, I'm all for it and speaking up and using my voice. And, you know, I'm also an artist, like, and using my art and stuff and putting it out there just to help people realize. And I also connected to what you said about, you know, I'm not in Greek life, but like going to Hofstra is a predominantly white school, and working with people that are also white and older too, you know, having conversations like that with them. I just think that it's really important to have conversation and communicate with others, because I've also had many people coming to me and contacting me and saying, oh, you know, how are you? I just want to let you know I stand with you. And I said, that's great. But what I need you to do is have conversations with your family or people that you know that you're friends with that do these things. Because I know a lot of my friends, they have family members that often, like, you know, say slurs and are racist and stuff. And I'm like, I know it's scary, but this is the time that you have to step out of your comfort zone and talk about it, because I feel like I'm tired now. Like, I don't want to continue to talk and say these things all the time. Not that I'm going to stop doing it, but I feel like now is your turn to jump in and use your voice. You know, Black people have been doing this forever now. So now it's your turn. If you really want to make a change and you really want to make a difference, this is your time to shine.
Something that someone said the other day that kind of has been like in my mind as we're talking is that they were like, why are you coming down to the city? Why are you coming down to these neighborhoods to protest? Like, that's like a whole bunch of people coming together who already agree. Like, you need to take this movement to where you're from. You need to disrupt their like like lifestyle, because they're the people who need to learn. Like, everyone has to take it back to where they're at, and you need to address your community. It's great that you agree with you and you know what you're talking about and like you fight for us and all of that, but we need you to start being active and like do something about it. Like, that's only like half of step one to being like a really good ally and like being able to do stuff. Have that difficult conversation with the people you can reach. Like, you need to reach the places where I can't. Because in some conversations, I can be saying all the facts, all the statistics, all the logic, and they'll still say I'm wrong. Like, that's majority of what I experienced growing up. And it's, at a certain point, it's just like, am I crazy? Like, I'm not crazy. Like, I can't reach these people, but they'll listen to you because you look like them. They'll at least, you know, hear you. And whoever that, I don't know how many people we can legitimately change that way, but at least it's in some way moving forward. That's the best you can do, then that's the best you can do.
I think you make such a good point about really reaching people in the spaces that you are at, because, you know, we all live around major cities, or some of us live in major cities, so it's so easy to go to a protest or access those things. But then when you think about your own communities that you live in, whether it's the building that you live in and different things that you know about that building and about the composition of the people who live there, or just the neighborhood itself, if you walk around and you get the nod and you get the agreement, then why not try and organize, or why not try and make an impact in the people that see you every day and don't acknowledge what's going on in the bigger cities, that they're just thinking, oh, this is this is going on out there. This isn't here.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate everyone that's talking. It's been really helpful a lot. And me recognizing my white privilege with that, recognizing that I need to start like from the home. I need to start and talk to people and have those uncomfortable conversations. I need to talk to my job. I need to talk to my coworkers. I need to talk to, I'm in grad school. I need to talk to my, my cohort, and I need to start there because that's what's going to make the change. And while protests do help and donating do help, and I have been doing that, I think that I really need to sit down and make those decisions to have those conversations with people. I think that that's really going to create the change.
Thanks, everyone. So now we're going to move on to the second section of our conversation about coping and healing. I understand that this experience, and even someone had reached out to me before this and just shared with me how exhausting and draining this has become, not only because of social media, but also just off of conversations that we have. So even if you go home later tonight or after this is done and you just feel exhausted and drained, I just want to talk about that. I want to understand it a little bit more, and I want to know if anyone's, had a way to find peace or a way to disconnect that's still effective.
I'll go. So when everything started happening, I just felt a lot of heaviness in my chest and, like you said, feeling drained and extremely tired. I felt like I wanted to cry. I felt like I wanted to break some things up. But being in school and going to grad school for creative arts therapy, I learned a lot about meditation and mindfulness and how important it is to just sit with yourself and breathe. And not only that, but I'm a very spiritual person too. So I take time out of my day to really pray. I just close myself in my room and I just sit there and pray and cry if I have to. Or just turn on some music, some gospel music, something that'll just keep me upbeat, or just simply having a conversation with somebody else about something else that's going on, or something that that's good, that can really lift your spirits up. But for sure, mindfulness and just sitting down and maybe turn on a guided meditation to help you breathe, because it's not easy, or just laying there in your bed, light a candle, something like that, to just really calm you down. It works differently for everybody, but I know for me that's something I've been practicing lately. So whatever is comfortable for any of you and that really soothes you, then I just say do that to try to get you grounded.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Senna Harley. I'm from South Jamaica, Queens, and I completely agree with you. And I also think that just making sure that you are, working on yourself, and you have, if you're able to, take care of yourself and just make sure you have everything you need, because it's a very heavy situation. I think it help you gain clarity, and then with that clarity, you can, be able to have discernment and be able to move with intention. So when it comes to posting, or when it comes to figuring out how you're going to be an asset, you've cleared your mind, and now you have intention. So you're not going to just follow a trend on social media because you think it is what it is. Maybe you'll take a second, process whatever new information you have, and move with that. I feel like sometimes we might get carried away, especially in a time like this, where like we're dealing with a pandemic, we're dealing with all these racial tensions, political tensions. I feel like we're very vulnerable, and with that, it's easy to manipulate your mind, and you see something online and now it's got you affected. I feel like going down your timeline in the morning is like walking along a beach and you just picking up all the trash, and that gets heavy after a while. So I feel like you got to just be able to take, so for me, I feel like if I'm trying to, practice mindfulness, I definitely get offline, and I don't want to absorb all of these opinions, and I'll, sit within, think for myself, and I'll come back and, give out whatever information I need, and I feel like I need to give out. So I feel like that mindfulness is very important, especially for a movement like this, because we know we're near the end. Like, this is just the beginning, and I would hate to, have everybody but just pour so much of yourself out now, and then when we get back, you'll, be discouraged because everyone's gonna get back to business. Like, what are we doing now to be able to make sure that this endures past when they open the outdoors back? You know what I mean? So I feel like that's very important for that.
I just want to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to echo that too. I've had quite a difficult time trying to navigate how much time do I want to spend on social media, how much time do I want to spend on the news, how much, because it can be overwhelming. And so unplugging has been really, really helpful, and just kind of shutting things off and saying okay, if I'm going to do whatever it is that I would normally do in my routine, except now I'm going to add 20 minutes to the beginning of my day where I have kind of some silence, where I'm still awake, but I'm doing something that makes me really at ease. So I have what I would probably call a mild addiction to phone app games. One of my favorites is Peggle Blast, if you'd like to get it. But what's been really helpful is just taking things or taking apps and different mindfulness things, like someone said earlier, and just using those things to kind of break off time, set aside time, where I'll do whatever I would normally do on Instagram or do whatever I would normally do at work, but then also saying this is my lunch break or this is my whatever, and giving myself increments to do things. And the other thing that's been really helpful for me is having, of course, this space, and thanks Gab for creating this space for everybody to talk through things, because I think that kind of can ease, at least you can feel wow, somebody else is experiencing what I'm experiencing, or someone else has those same shared feelings. But I'm very close with my mom, and so we have I'll send her some memes of things, but also a lot of the things that she's not on Instagram, so that she hasn't seen, and being able to talk through those things with someone that I trust has also been really, really helpful, because it helps me to be able to get geared up for conversations that are a little bit more uncomfortable with my coworkers or whoever it might be, because I know that I have someone that I trust to help me so far.
I'll share. Hi, everyone. I definitely agree. This has been really exhausting. And for many of us, this has been something that we've experienced all of our lives. This has been something that we felt deep in our souls. And unfortunately, has been something that our ancestors have also experienced. And I definitely agree with the sentiment that unplugging is incredibly important, and being deliberate about carving out time for yourself, quiet time. But something that I have really enjoyed being open about is me as a Black woman going to therapy. And for a lot of us as Black individuals, we know that in our community, openly talking about our mental health is not something that's widely promoted or just openly discussed. But I find that in spaces where I am amongst Black people like myself, saying I am a Black woman, I do go to therapy, that's something that helps me to cope, is really liberating for a lot of my Black peers. So I hope that if you can go to therapy, do so. And I definitely recommend finding a therapist who is culturally competent. For me, I go to a Black woman therapist, and that makes all the difference, because it creates way more of an open space for us to have real conversations.
Going off of that, when I first got therapy, I was very, very vocal about letting everyone know immediately, just hey, you know what, I feel great right now. So I know times are tough and we're kind of stuck inside, and it's you can't literally go see someone all the time. So I think there's an app called Talkspace that allows people to be able to text or even FaceTime a therapist from anywhere around the world. You can also, in some cases, choose exactly who you want to talk to. So I think it's a really great resource, because for me, on the topic of social media, there was nothing to prepare me to open Twitter and just see thousands of videos and pictures of people who look like me getting brutalized on the street. There's nothing to prepare anyone for that. And there was that night where the president made that tweet about, hey, I'm gonna send the military towards those thugs. I was like, oh, well, this is too much, and I have to close the app. And to what Senna said, I took that time to just reflect, take a second, and figure out exactly what I wanted to do, what I wanted to say next. And I think it's that so many of us are caught up in maybe the performance or maybe trying to get the word out, that we forget about our mental health and just how much this has been weighing on us. It's okay to take that step back and just say, I need my me time. I need to work on me, to focus on me right now in order to get the right words out to people. Because again, there's nothing to prepare someone for what we're seeing right now.
So to piggyback off what you said, like, absolutely. And I'm the type of person that sometimes it'll take me getting sick for me to realize that I need to step back, that I need to like unplug. I'll either get a migraine or I'm like, okay, maybe I need to relax. But like you said, like just learning to unplug, because like you said, there's nothing to prepare you from seeing so much. And I'm the type of person that with everything going on, a Black woman married to a Black man raising 2 Black kids, like it's and I think about my kids every day, and I'm just like, it's just so much that's on me. It's so heavy, and I have to be like, okay, I need to relax, because if I don't, like, I'm such a feeler that I feel everything so intensely. And just knowing that, okay, maybe it's for the best that right now I take a day just to unplug, and it'll do you so much good. And I think is your name Kiara? I think you said, talking about, you know, being spiritual. I'm a spiritual person too, and when everything first started, I had used everything going on as a reason why I shouldn't reconnect with God. And I had said, God, there's too much going on. I don't want to do anything right now. I just want to lay down. But I realized that prayer and just having time away, isolation with God, whether like I created a quiet space in my home. So it's just like a corner that I go to and just relax, breathe, and just allow peace just to fill me up. So that's what I've found has been a reason to, something to help me. And then having my weekly Bible studies, still doing the things that I would have normally just put off, and just still continuing to live life as well, but also keeping in mind the entire situation. But again, if I let myself be so depressed and just sad, I'll stay in that space, and it'll be really hard for me to come back out of it. So just still continuing to do life, I guess.
Kind of going off of that, one thing I realized is how easy it is to look at the posts and look at the facts and the statistics. It's so easy to look outside your window or even go somewhere and just fall into this trap of like pessimism and hopelessness and despair. And it's just such an effortless response to be hopeless and to feel hatred as a reaction to what's going on. So the thing that's been helping me is definitely kind of like branching off of what Abby was saying, Jesus. I'm a huge fan of Jesus. He's the only person I feel like I genuinely do not have to put on a brave face to talk to. And I can tell him I have hopelessness in my heart. I feel cynical right now. I feel hateful right now. And he's like, okay, got you. And I feel like that has been truly comforting. Just that healing that comes from him, that comes from a person who can interpret my feelings better than I can interpret them. So definitely depending on God to get me through this has saved my life, just like it always does.
Hey everyone, so I'm Tim, and I'll just kind of piggyback off that just a little bit. What I've been doing to cope is protecting my mornings a lot. I've been protecting my mornings in such a way that, I have to just sit for a moment. I have to read. That's when I get some of my best reading in, and my workout, whether it be yoga, whether it be core, whether it be go for a run. It's really been helping me cope, because I think that sometimes you can wake up and reach and grab for that phone. And then once you grab for that phone, if you check any one of your social media threads, if you check LinkedIn, if you check Twitter, it doesn't matter. It's going to start to spiral you. And then once you get into that tunnel, we know how hard it is to dig out. And that sets the tone for your day, as opposed to being really, really intentional about how you start your day. And so I start my day with prayer. I start my day with reading, with meditation, and maybe a little workout and running, probably in that order, and then some food, because you want to also add some nutritional value immediately. Those are the things that help me to really get through this time, because Monday was a difficult day, all right? Tuesday was even more difficult day to wake up after Monday, because probably Monday you didn't really get much sleep after what you saw. So how do you set that tone? Well, for me, that's just what I do. That's what's been helpful during these times. It's rough. it's something that I have never seen in my lifetime. Most of us have never seen. And so what I also find myself doing is going back and watching old videos of movements of the 70s, watching Nikki Giovanni or James Baldwin, trying to figure out what they did, what were they talking about, what was that conversation, knowing that this time is definitely different than that time, but just how did you deal with a small piece of it? And so what I'm hopeful for is that I think that these conversations have a new tone to them. Although the conversations may not be new from the 70s, from the 60s, there feels like it's a different tone, at least from what I've been kind of watching on YouTube, not really having experienced that time.
My name is Brianna from New Jersey. Going off of pretty much everybody said, some of the things that I've been doing to cope is to step away, which I know was really hard for me at first, like put my phone down, because I feel bad looking at everything, and then if I wasn't looking at it, I would feel bad and blame myself for not like looking at everything. But I finally like kind of had to get to a point of like balance and like seeing like what I can handle. So yeah, some of the things that have been helping me is definitely reading the Bible and praying, breathing, kind of like what Timmy was saying, working out. I can't run. I'm really bad at running, but that's another thing that's been helping me. And definitely talking to my family, reaching out and seeing them and seeing how they feel. It's definitely helping. Usually I paint to help cope, but like, I don't know, this time I didn't really feel, I couldn't even like paint much. So instead I've been reading a lot of like art books about influential Black artists, and that's been very helpful. But yeah, just, I don't know, finding those things that like talking to family, talking now, I don't know, I feel like it is very important. I'm still kind of learning like that balance, but
I think I want to jump back to something that Senna said, pronunciation, about like the full range of like coping. Because what I've been thinking about often is what I believe like James Baldwin said, which was about like how like once you really understand everything, you're like in a rage all the time, because like it happens every day and so often. So the point that you made that I wanted to go back to was you mentioned coping with when everybody like goes back to like ignoring it, like that kind of slow fade out when the movement kind of slows down. And I guess that's the thing that like I've been able to manage everything before that, but that's the one that's starting to like piss me off, because it's so slight. Like it's just like people are deciding that it's done. Like, I'm just gonna post this regular thing. Oh, yep, I'm talking about this now. And I was talking to a YouTuber that I know, and she was like, everybody's just posting like nothing's happening. And and that's gonna be the thing that pushes, like that slowly pushes everybody out of it. So I think coping with that part is like the same as coping with it happening every day. Just like, okay, well, at least we had that moment, and like, unfortunately, like, I hope that we won't have to do it again, but clearly, like the policies, like, I think, like, the fact that lynching in some places is just now becoming illegal, it's like, those are the things that start to, like, really piss me off, and, like, those are the things that are going to take longer to change, because we do have to be involved in politics and vote and like go to things and then get people out there. But there are so many, like, it really is systemic, because there are so many reasons why we are the least likely able to do that. Like, a lot of those resources and that access, we don't have. So I think that what I try to do is like focus on why it is that I do what I do, and use my purpose to put myself in a better position to make a bigger impact and bigger changes. And I think kind of throwing myself into my writing and like filmmaking and like creating content and in my work, and just being like, I know why I'm doing this. And like every day just seeing what happens to people like me is like my motivation to keep working hard so that I can make a difference later. So that's what I do, at least.
No, I think you made some really great points, especially when you talked about your friend who is in YouTube and basically is a social media influencer. And so right now we're seeing how a lot of different people who work with brands, and that's basically their career of just posting for brands, they're trying to decide exactly how to move forward with what they post, how to be intentional. And then we're seeing people who aren't being intentional at all, who are just, posting a selfie or posting their everyday picture to make money. So I think it's very interesting. One thing that's been on my heart has been, right now, how do we celebrate life? Because last Monday was the death of George Floyd, and then Wednesday, the 27th, was my birthday. And I chose not to post anything. I chose not really to excite myself over my birthday because of what was happening and because how much heartbreak I was experiencing. Even though I've been able to be home with family, it's been really great, and it's been nice to get away. But at the same time, it wasn't until this Wednesday that I decided that I needed to step away from everything going on. And it was probably a couple months ago that I decided to make this thing real in my life. I call it Wellness Wednesday. And so I clock out of work at 5 p.m. And usually I don't do that because I work for a hospital. So my day consists of just taking care of others and acknowledging others' experiences and what they're going through. And so I stay at work till 7 p.m. sometimes. But I clock out at 5 on Wednesdays, and I do something for me. I take a bath, I treat myself to a great dinner, I read a great book, I watch a great movie. I just remember that I am human and that I'm a person who matters and that my feelings are real. And when you don't acknowledge those things, it begins to tick away at you, it begins to deteriorate. So that's just one thing that I do.
I mean, Juneteenth is around the corner, and I fully plan on celebrating super hard this year. So,
I think another thing that's really gets to be. Oh, sorry, Key. I didn't mean to. I was saying that I think something else. This is gonna sound like super simple, but I also think it makes all the difference. Just because we've been so inundated lately with all of these like images and videos and all this stuff. We really don't really know not even that we don't know, but we don't realize in the moment the effect that it may be having on our psyche, like subconsciously. So I think something that makes all the difference is just remembering, like, because as Black people, like, we're so. This sounds like such a like. Sorry, I can't speak. I sound so silly saying this, but like, there's just so much like greatness in Black people and just being Black and just like, you know what I'm saying, like, don't let the media lie to you, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like if all you watch is the news and you see like us being like, shot and like tased and like treated like animals, like, that will really chip away at you. So I think just still being conscious of the fact that there's just so much to be proud for.
I just wanted to say something. Timmy, I believe that's his name. I'm sorry if I mixed it up. Said two things that really popped out to me. I like that he said protection. I believe that protecting your spirit and your energy is so important. And I'm a like firm believer in like energies affecting you, because there can be negative energy, there can be positive energy. And if you just place yourself in a space that's just full of positivity, you'll see that it start to affect you and really become a part of you. My grandmother always likes to say, whatever you get into gets into you, and it is so true that happens. And then he also talked about eating something that's nutritious. I believe that right now this is a very crucial moment where we need to be eating things that are healthy for us, because that also can affect how we move and maneuver every day, and it's especially our mind too. But our mind is more powerful than our physical, honestly, and they're all tied together. So it's really important that we take care of that. And also, I think it's really important for us to realize that it is okay to be okay right now. It is okay to find some happiness, because I think sometimes we can get, tripped up over everything, like Kadeem said, that we see in the media, and we're just constantly looking at all the negative things. I started to just look at all the positive things and then share those things with other people, because we do need to be reminded that we're resilient and we're strong and we're powerful, we're educators, all those great things, because the media only shows the negative things that are going on. So it's our job to put it out there in the outside world, and also put it within ourselves too.
Especially as regular people, I feel like we get the ideas portrayed that you're only, like, if you're Black, you're only, the worth is really only on you, like, if you are like this, like, super accomplished, what the mainstream considers to be Black excellence, when really and truly, like, getting up every day and just like living with like purpose and intention, I feel like just it makes so much of a difference.
Going off of what Kiara said, eating healthy is super important. I've been trying to kind of curb my eating habits, a little less Cheez-Its, more salads. But on that note, every Wednesday, my mom and I get a friggin' Uber Eats like special, just to really like sit down with ourselves and just say, like, isn't this nice? We get to have nice things right now, right? We've been locked up for so long. So much of the media is so heavy. I think it's also okay just to treat now and then, beyond eating well or eating horribly. I also try and write. I try and do all these. I try and collaborate with people and try and make sure that I'm getting my voice out, so that way we're all collaborating in one big circle. We're all trying to have that conversation, because like Abby said, it's hard sometimes to let yourself be in that funk, to let yourself be sad, but it's also just as hard right now to feel that joy sometimes.
I've been revisiting music from Black artists, especially because I feel like those are the only people I want to hear right now in my ear. Uh, but I've been revisiting like Kendrick. Like, I've been going through his whole albums, especially Kendrick Lamar, because he has a way, especially like top to bottom the albums, he has a way of going in the beauty and then, addressing, like the ugly and in and out of that. And J. Cole too, and Lauryn Hill, and just a lot of different artists who have like been saying this kind of stuff. I feel like that reassures me that there was like, no matter how far back you go, there's always somebody who's talking about it. So like, we are moving, albeit slowly, but like it's going somewhere. It's got to be going somewhere. We're allowed to sit at the award shows now, collect the awards, rather than, not being allowed in the room at all. So I think just following that kind of, like Tim said, like the kind of history and just like looking at other things that have happened in the past kind of gives me hope for the future and like a better outlet.
Very true. I feel like a lot of people have watched this on Netflix, but Hollywood, the series, is so good, and it just touches on different, racial issues, but also rights for homosexual men. And so it's just, it will really open your eyes to a lot of things and expose a lot of truths, even though it's a fictional show. And then later on, I have a list of different like documentaries that you can watch, especially 13th on Netflix. There's a few others, but we'll get there. So a question to kind of tie us into the next section, which is, perspectives on moving forward, came from someone who couldn't be here tonight, but it was, what is a way to avoid burnout and getting tired from constantly explaining the same things to people? We're coming to the reality that it's really not our jobs to educate other people on how not to be racist and how to be better allies, even though, with our outreach, we can easily still do that. But honestly, it's how do we find the way to draw the line between helping someone in their efforts to be better and doing the work for them?
I'll speak real quick. If you come to me, or if I feel that you need to be educated on something, I'm going to look in the library and find a book for you that I think is a good influential author who can kind of just give you what you need. So if you come to me, I might throw, I don't know, Democracy Now, in Black right to your doorstep, or I might throw something else at your doorstep very quickly, because I think that you want people to take some accountability for themselves, right? And so accountability is what we all want, but the only way we can take accountability if we look inwardly. So as long as we are sincere about where we are and where we want to go, and if they tell me that they're sincere, I have to take them at their word. The way I can point you in the right direction is not necessarily preach to you, but allow a tool to help you out, which will typically be a book.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like a book is I think that's one of the best ways to, be able to point someone in the right direction, especially if you feel like it helped you or it was informative or, it spoke to you. I think another thing is when addressing something like this, I think there's two different, situations where you are having a conversation. I think there's one when you're speaking to allies or potential allies, that's one category, but then there's also speaking amongst your friends about things, because we may not always have, maybe we may always need to, correct ourselves or, shed light onto certain situations, or maybe say, so because some people might come with some misinformation. So I think you also have to be able to help someone discern whether what they, whatever info they have is true or not. Because I've had like a bunch of conversations this week personally with peers who have, have given up, or they'll say, I hate voting or whatever. And it's cool. It's like, I get it. It is what it is. But like at the same time, my perspective, I feel personally, is like, they wouldn't try to suppress our votes for no reason if it didn't work. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's something going on there. And so like, I had to have a deep, I had to I had to take a moment to do my own research to then bring it back to them. So I feel like, and these aren't, this is an ally. This is somebody who looks just like me. And so like, sometimes if the people around you, you don't want them, especially if their voices, you want to be able to correct each other. And I'm open to, being corrected on certain things. I think there's just two different lanes of conversations that we have to have. But I feel like definitely a book is a great way to start. And yeah, I feel like I said everything.
Going off of what Tim and Senna said, I think what they're hitting on when they're talking about like the book, right, is the power of education. And that shouldn't need to be something that we burden the Black community with. Educating American history properly is something that should be in our schools, and it's not being done properly. Our history is very whitewashed. It's taught from the point of view of the victor. And when you simplify these things and you make them consumable for like the white population, that's where you get a lot of this misinformation from. Like so many people. I live in upstate New York, and it's a very white neighborhood, and it's like these things I didn't realize until I went to college. I took all these classes. It's like the Civil War didn't end slavery. I mean, it ended slavery officially, but you still have those effects of those things, and it's like, okay, Black people were given the right to vote, but then states did all these things to suppress those, that actual right. Just because, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, that there were so many other motivations behind that. That was not, America had a moral awakening, we're saying slavery is wrong, let's end it. There was economic motivations behind that. Some people wanted slavery to end, but they didn't want them to have racial equality. There's all these like nuances that we don't teach, and it's responsible. I think it has a big part to do with the things that are going on today. It's a disservice to our students of color. We're not helping out white students either, because we're feeding them a narrative that's not correct, and that's perpetuating racism.
Can I just piggyback off of what Crystal said? Because just this week, like this past, with everything like going on, I really have been like, just like reflecting. And earlier this week, I was speaking to I think my cousin, and I was like, every time I think about it, it's really baffling, the fact that like in school we really don't learn anything about Black people like that. And like it starts at slavery. Like I remember being in school, like in elementary school, and just like, I don't know if anybody else shares this experience too, but February, Black History Month, like I just remember being like, oh yeah, like first day of Black History Month, it's like, I'm gonna know the answer to that, and that, because these people look like me. You know what I'm saying? I can't say the same for like the rest of the months of the year. And it really is a shame because we are only painted in like this specific like light, even in an academic setting where it's supposed to be like the truth.
Yeah, I think definitely the way Black people are portrayed in history books is really telling, because it's this kind of tone of like we're kind of being paraded for specific things. Like I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, and I was just like, the fact that over and over again you learn about like George Washington Carver, you know, with the peanuts, and they teach it as if that's like the capacity of Black people, like trivial things like that. And it's like, why aren't we talking about the guy who made the X-ray machine? Like, why don't we talk about the people like that who made like big strides, that if it wasn't for these people, you wouldn't have half the luxuries that you do. But they don't teach those things. And that's why it's like, you have to, like, I always encourage people, leave where you grew up, because that's when you're gonna first, you know, be stimulated, you know, that catalyst to start looking outside of yourself. Like Crystal said, like when I got to college, that was when things really like changed for me, and I started to notice a difference. And that prompted me to learn more and educate myself more and like understand more. And the problem is, a lot of people have the privilege to not do that. But if you see, like, if you read in a book, the world isn't on fire, but you're living in the world, it's on fire. Is it not the book that's wrong? Because you're there, aren't you? You don't see what's going on. So you need to stop using your privilege to ignore reading up on these things and understanding these things and knowing these things, because that's when you being an ally to me is going to be a lot more helpful. When just in daily life you can correct people when they say things that don't make sense. Like when we're like if somebody's talking about mass incarceration, saying, you know, oh well, you know, they belong there ... You can say, actually no, that's not true. We get charged 3 times as much for smaller crimes and have to serve twice as long sentences. Like that's the kind of like things I need, like the education I need off the dome to be spitting out when I'm not there. Like that's where we make that transition. I think education is so important in this fight, because that's the thing, is like, not to pity, I don't want to say the oppressor or the other side or the opposition or whatever, but they really are like ignorant. Like they really don't know. And a lot of those people in those communities are like, even like when you speak generationally especially, are not going to be getting out of that habit anytime soon, because they have no reason to. And if there's no one pushing them to, they won't, which is why, like I said earlier, we need you in places I can be to push these kinds of changes so that things can happen.
I just want to add on that really quickly. Yes, we all have experienced the whitewash of history in our elementary education, middle school, high school, but also in terms of university education, we're seeing how a lot of these schools are dismantling and defunding African study programs. So that just goes to show the higher education's institutions' value or consideration of African history. And that has to end, because allyship and general education doesn't just end when you get to college. It has to go all throughout your life. So I say that because we need to hold these institutions more accountable for the programs and the studies that they offer.
I mean, like the kind of curriculum you'd have in an HBCU compared to a PWI is like I've seen, you know, friends of mine who've gone to HBCUs, it's like their curriculum is like so different. And like the experience, because they have faculty members of color, makes even more of a difference, which I think, I mean, especially at going to a PWI, experienced a lot, that there was only 2 Black professors in the entire department. And the way they're treated is like so clear from other people. It's what Deandra said.
It's very telling.
Well, let me just share this other extra point too, still on education, but not necessarily in a university setting. From a military standpoint, the education in the military that military personnel receive, having spent some time in the military, in the Marine Corps, in fact, history was not told about the first Black Marines. And to give you a small tidbit of what that sounds like, you might have heard about it, you might not have heard about the Montford Point Marines, where they took from 1942 to 1949 about 20,000 Black men who were not allowed to become Marines in San Diego or in Parris Island, and they sent them to North Carolina. And so that's where they had to train in North Carolina, in Jacksonville, North Carolina, to be part of this, to fight for the right for freedom, to participate in their freedom abroad, freedom at home. Just it's so telling when somebody really doesn't want you to know your history. And I think that if we really truly take the time to learn our history from Reconstruction, like Crystal was talking about, from before the Emancipation Proclamation, from before, I mean, just think about the recent publication in the New York Times on the 1619 Project. Just take that for some light reading. Start with those essays there. I think when we know more about who we are, we can better connect with one another, because we'll truly understand who we are at our core. And really what we want to do is we really do want love. We want to be able to love each other and connect with each other. But we can't do that if we don't know who we are.
That is so right. It really does start with education and reframing our minds and reframing what we're learning. I had a conversation last night with my dad, and I think he was surprised by what I was saying about how growing up, even though he experienced this too, but growing up, elementary school, middle school, high school, you're only taught the same facts about Black people or about Black leaders or, who's the newest leader. But you're not taught all of the other secret facts about, who made so many different inventions that help us do things today that we don't think about. So I think it's incredible that we're coming to this point now. I think it's late, but we are at least waking up to the reality that we have to change the system. So the next question kind of goes along with the ideas of allyship and how do we help our allies, acknowledge their own privilege, but also how do we help them have conversations with us about what we're going through? I saw a couple posts on Instagram about, don't ask me how I'm doing, or don't ask me, am I okay? That's not the right question, and stuff like that. So it really is the sense of what are the right questions to ask us right now? What are the things that we need them to do right now?
Well, kind of like what I said earlier, I think just trying to have the uncomfortable conversations, with their family members, and also kind of just educating themselves first before they have that conversation with their family members. I think it's important that if you just go in blind and you want to just sit there and feel like, oh my God, like, you might get upset or whatever else. But I think it's really important that they first educate themselves about it and then try to go out and have, conversation, because then they have the stuff to back it up. And, even though they shouldn't have to, because it is, it's a terrible thing, but, it's important that they do know and send out information that is accurate. I actually had a friend that contacted me, and she told me that they were actually having classes. I think she said at Yale they were giving out free classes where they were teaching you about Black history and stuff, and she sent me the link. I'm gonna try to pull that up and then put it in the chat for you guys. But it's a free class, and they teach you about Black history, and they teach you about the Black Lives Matter movement and all that good stuff. So I think it's really important just to self-educate and have uncomfortable conversations over and over again, no matter, how hard it can get.
I would like to share an experience that I had that I think pertains to this situation. Sorry. I, in the midst of all this, was waiting on a particular group. Personally, there are people that you care about and that you like, but this is also like a test for them, and I'm just kind of like watching y'all to see what exactly it is you're going to do, how you're going to respond, because that's gonna I'm gonna take note of it, and I'm gonna do what I do, and I'm gonna make my decisions going from there. But there was a white man specifically that I was waiting on, because I was like, we are supposed to be good friends. So I'm not gonna say nothing to you first, because you should know what time it is. You can see what's going on in the media. You see what's happening online. You see what's happening in all these different cities. It is your choice to go one way or the other. Are you going to go with what nonsense Fox people say? Are you going to lean back and just ignore it? Are you going to invest the time in understanding the issues? And I had a conversation with him, and he, said, hey, how are you? And I told him, like, I unloaded on him exactly how I was. And I did that intentionally, because I was just like, if you really want to know how I am at this time, I will absolutely tell you exactly how exhausting and stressful and just like crazy that it is right now in my mind, in my home, with my peers, in my community specifically. And we chatted, and basically he was like, I'm going to start doing the research. I'm going to start like reading up and doing things. And he's like, but what else can I do? And I was like, I can send you links and I can tell you where to donate, but the only thing I care about that you said you're going to do is research and read and go learn for yourself. That makes me happy, because that's you really taking the initiative to do it on your own. Don't ask me what to do. You're not a child. At your big age, you should know how to find some resources and go look into it if you so choose. I'm not going to force nobody to do anything. I'm going to reach who I can reach and conversate with that people who are willing and who are open and who are, and that's not something that every Black person has to do. That's something that I choose to do. And it is exhausting and time consuming, but I choose to do it because that's another method and I feel that I can make change. But that's not something that Black people are obligated to do for anybody. So it really is, just to echo what we've all been saying, is that it has to be you on your part. Once you genuinely make you get on your computer and Google books on systemic racism or, resources, or, whatever. Once you start doing that, that's the most genuine thing you can do. And that's something that's going to make the biggest impact on me. Because if it ain't that, then, I got too many people following me and followers anyway, so we could start slicing numbers there.
Yeah, kind of to go off of that, I definitely agree with everything that was said so far. I saw one post that I kind of resonated with me. It was like, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. And I just got a lot of my non-Black friends reaching out to me with so many apologies. And, I kind of told them, like, I'm not asking for your apologies. I'm not asking you to feel guilty or anything. It's not my job to appease your guilt, just like it's not my job to alleviate your horror or to even ask you to care. I'm not like, I expect people to be human. I feel like I just had that tendency to see the best in people, but this kind of, I don't know, I feel like I'm reevaluating everything through this whole entire process. But yeah, I'm not asking anybody to apologize to me or just feel so guilty and kind of unpack all of their guilt onto me. We're just asking for a change and for you to educate yourself.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like the messages that make me have to put my phone down and like reevaluate how I'm going to respond are the ones that are like, I just want to know that I stand with you 100% and I support you. And it's like, these are just words that you typed out, but like, what is it that you're gonna do though? Because that's how you can show me. Because you telling me that's nothing. It's like actions are everything. And you're right. The apologies are like demeaning in a way, because it's like that. Okay, like what do you want me to do then? Like you're really throw that onto people when you do it that way, and it is kind of like offensive. It's like you said. It's just really cumbersome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. One more thing. I feel like it's interesting and shocking, not shocking actually, to see how much Black people have been forced to know everything about the white experience. Like I feel like we know so much about that culture, the white American culture, but they know so little about the Black experience in our culture. And I feel like that's just been how it is for centuries. Like we've been so exposed to or forced to know everything there is about their culture where they haven't shown or expressed any interest in learning really what it is about our experience and our culture.
I think sometimes I come to this point with music where so much of our feelings and emotions of the Black people's experience are in songs, are in music. And so people will listen to our music and they'll feel something because we're able to do that, but then they won't take it any further. They won't say, oh, well, I really like this artist. Let me go and read up on, what they advocate for or what they've experienced in their life or why they wrote this song. They kind of just go with the feeling of the song. So I think we're seeing that with our culture, is that there's more to it than just listening to a song. It's really diving into the meanings behind it and learning about that.
When Kendrick Lamar's DNA charted and it was playing everywhere, I was so pissed off that nobody was actually listening to the words. Like, the entire song, I got royalty, got war and peace inside my DNA. Like, the entire first verse is just him literally addressing how difficult it is to walk that line, like being Black and being happy in our culture, being able to do things, and also knowing that you're trying to, like, not even trying to, you're actively like taking it and branding it as something else. And he addresses police violence, he addresses so many things in that song, and like people were bumping it at parties and just like, yeah, and then like screaming nigga, and it's like, so you're not even hearing, you're not listening, are you? Like, you girls will just dance to any kind of beat, won't you? Because he's trying to tell you something and you don't listen. And I think that's where I start to get bothered too, because it's like, are you intentionally ignoring this? Like, that's when it starts to feel like intentional. Like, certain songs, like rap songs, when they do well, it's just wild to me that nobody really pays attention to what they're saying or what they're doing. And also that rap is demeaned and treated the way it is, because that's another art form in which we've been saying this for so long and addressing all these problems for such a long time, and nobody's done anything about it. So it's weird to watch it happen when it happens.
I just wanted to talk about that. You can honestly see what's expected out of the music too when it comes to hip hop. What's more popular, because J. Cole, he's not really a A-list rap artist, and he even says it a lot of the times in his music. And I really love the song 1985 because it breaks down that exact same thing that Natalie was talking about, about listening to the songs and dancing to it and all this other stuff and connecting to it, or whatever. But it's really crazy because it's like we are painted in this specific picture, and the type of music that's listened to mostly is like words, it has nigga in it, or it's stuff that like it's talking about drugs and females and all this other crazy stuff, instead of something that's actually bringing insight into what's really going on in the Black community. There was another point I wanted to bring up. I'm blanking a little bit. Come back to me. I gotta think about it.
The last question of the evening, I don't want to move forward with that until we're done with this. So if anyone else has any other things to say about, the idea of allyship and how to move forward.
Just one more thing I guess I can bring up is, the white guilt has been very real as of late. I've gotten the texts and the phone calls about, just like, I'm so sorry, or how are you doing, and all of that whatnot. And, on one level you appreciate it because it's people saying, hey, I care about you, but at the same time, an apology isn't really the goal anymore. I think in regards to the riots, Black bodies are so important, to see more, to see, like, it's so much for a Black person to go out to a riot and to put basically their life on the line to protect, their life and everyone else's life. But just as important, it's really important that if you are white and you do have the ability to go out there and, show that you are present, that means and matters so much. There was a video on Twitter or YouTube, whatever, of back at the DC White Lawn, a Black kid just jumped over the fence and got on his knees immediately. And the white man immediately just jumped right in front of him to like protect him. There's no telling what could have happened to that kid in that moment had that guy not been there. And so what I guess my point simply is that if you have the ability to go out, protest peacefully, or do whatever you have to do, just like make sure that, you know, you're aware, you know, bring people together, get out there, make some noise.
Hey everyone, my name's Lucine, and I actually saw an interesting quote about this. Somebody said something along the lines of, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, and I think that's really important also for allies and my fellow white Americans to understand. Like, this is something we really need to educate ourselves on so that we understand the issues at hand and what's going on, and we aren't ignorant. Like, your phone is so powerful, your computer is so powerful. If you can differentiate what is actually true in fact from just garbage opinion articles, I think that's really, really helpful. And so that you have those facts on hand. And it's also our responsibility to understand that this is so mentally taxing for the African American community in a way that we will never experience. So, you know, when you need to take a seat and recover and get better and treat yourself and really just take care of yourself mentally, that's when it's my responsibility to continue stepping up and continue speaking on these issues and just really make sure that I'm pushing this conversation. And then, you know, when you are mentally ready to get back into it, like, we can both continue to fight together and continue pushing this forward. So I think that's one thing that allies can do to be more understanding in this situation and just really, you know, you continue to fight. So hopefully that made sense. And I think that's definitely important to just keep pushing this message forward and realize that it's not just one community's responsibility to get this information out. Like, just go on Google and read articles and educate yourself.
All right, I think we're ready for the last question. This has to do with, you know, police brutality and what we think are the next steps and what we need to do. Someone had asked, you know, do you think it's more effective to advocate and ask for the complete abolishment of police right out, or take it in steps? Of course, we're trying to come to a certain goal, but what's the most effective way in getting there? And do we think there's enough being done right now with our legislators and with the government and people who have remained silent in those positions of such high power?
Hassan Minaj has a great video where he addresses police brutality in America, and he talks about a law that I cannot remember the name of, but basically getting rid of that law would be the first one, because it basically protects cops from, please go watch this video because I don't want to botch it, but it basically protects cops from doing something that hasn't already been done in a way. So if, like, they commit a crime against somebody that hasn't already been committed by a police officer to another person, then they can't be charged with it. But it's a catch-22 because they can't be charged for something that hasn't happened, and they can get really creative with the specifics of that. So I think that, I mean, Americans ain't that bold to really abolish police completely yet. Like, if we're gonna do it, it's gonna have to happen in steps. But I think it's more about, let's first get rid of the things that were intentionally put in place to oppress Black people, because so many of those laws still exist in different states. And, like, for now, it's gonna have to be the polls, it's gonna have to be voting, it's gonna have to be, and once again, educating to even know what these laws are, to go find them, to snuff them out is super important. And that's why having Black voices, you know, educated Black people in different places, like, it's such a blessing to have, like, Black lawyers and Black judges and Black, like, law enforcement, and some, I'm not talking about on the ground, perhaps detectives and things like that, you know, corporate law enforcement. It's good to have Black people there too, to, like, advocate and move for these changes. And, like, just like Stacey Abrams, like, things like that. Like, we need more Black people in political office. Granted, I will note that Kamala Harris is probably an example of how that cannot always work in our favor. But it's these little changes there that have to happen, I think, with police brutality, because the problem is not that it's not happening or that people don't see it. The issue is that it's embedded in our laws that we can't do anything about it. And that's the problem. It's like, you shouldn't be that protected, because that's creating a culture of you being able to, you know, do whatever you want and hurt people. In my town, which is 13 blocks wide, mind you, we don't even have a zip code. Yesterday, a police officer maced this kid with pepper spray in the face for no reason. And it's like, even in a place, like even this little dusty town that doesn't really matter, 13 blocks wide, there's nothing going on here, you still feel the need to act that way towards people who hasn't done anything to you. And nothing's gonna happen to you. Like, that's where things have gotten out of hand. So it's when the legislation and laws and things get found out, those are the kind of achievements that make me like, yes, because the more of you we can put into jail for doing these things, the more we'll make an example out of those people and curb that behavior. Because the fight for you not being a racist is going to be a longer one and a longer investment. But the fight for you to stop killing me and then nothing happened, that can stop anytime now. We can work on that today.
I'm coming from a different point of view, but I work with children with autism, and I worry a lot about children or adults of color that have autism, because sometimes when people have autism, they have aggression or they have self-injurious behaviors. And you know, I've heard stories of kids, you know, walking in the neighborhood and they get lost from their parents, and they can start biting people, and they can start hitting people. And if they're children of people of color, cops can be, you know, shoot them. And it really terrifies me. And I think that cops, something needs to change, and they need to be taught how to de-escalate the situation. They need to be taught that, you know, these children have autism and that they need to understand that. And I'm just very, very worried about that. So that's just coming from a different perspective as well.
I'm gonna piggyback. Hi, everybody. My name is Kyla. I happen to be Gabby's cousin. I'm someone who's worked in that type of field, dealing with people who have, you know, mental disabilities and everything. And as far as the individuals that are Black with those type of disabilities, they are treated differently. I've seen it firsthand. For example, one of my consumers, he had to be at least like 6'5", over 200 pounds. So he was a big guy. And for us to be out in public and for people to see him, they would think like, oh, okay, he's dangerous. We're not gonna, you know, get involved with him or even go near him. And there was a point where we went to the mall, and there was a cop that even tried to tackle him and take him down because he thought that he was acting that way on purpose. And here we are, the workers telling him like, no, he's with us. That's not the case. But even in that type of community, they are affected as well, because I can go on for stories that's how they're even treated in their group homes sometimes by people who's supposed to take care of them. And for that instance, it doesn't even fall on either Black or white, because it can be any type of person working in that home and they would still treat that person the same way for whatever reason. So it does get frustrating, because when you know you have the mental capability to see what's going on and see how things are, and you take that on somebody who doesn't have that type of, you know, understanding as to things, is that it falls on you, because you're supposed to be the one teaching them. No matter what their capability is, you can teach them something, because a lot of them are capable. The ones that are high function, they know more than what you guys can probably even imagine, and they are paying attention. So they do ask questions. The ones that can, they do ask questions, and it can be hard trying to explain to them, but I wouldn't take that as, you know, all right, well, I'm not even going to bother, because who knows, they're going to remember. No, I'm going to constantly, you know, tell them what's going on for the ones that do know, because they're going to ask, and they're going to want to find out. So for them to be treated even differently, even someone with autism, by a cop at that, it is frustrating, because it's like, you can even take 2 seconds to just hear what somebody is telling you, like, oh, this person is going through this, or this person has this, and for you to simply continue to act like you don't care, it affects a lot of people. So yeah, just to go based off what she said as far as dealing in that type of situation and stuff.
It really makes you question the type of training that they get, especially when it comes to people with special circumstances. It's like, why is the first answer always aggression or violence? or, some sort of danger, it's just kind of unspeakable, but it is exposing that there are systematic changes that have to be made in the training system and the training educational system for that as well. Any last comments or questions?
Just to go off of that, Gabby, I am in physical therapy school, so I'm going to be in the healthcare system. And we had to take in our first semester an implicit bias test that sort of identified any biases, whether we knew of them or not, that we have within us. And I think there's a petition going around, I know, that is looking to introduce that into the police training situation. And that would be, I think, super beneficial, just to be even aware that you have a bias going into a situation, sort of kind of makes you recognize when those are when your biases are skewing your interpretation of the situation. And so something like that is, I think, would be helpful in, one, identifying biases that we all have, but two, making sure that they don't skew situations where you're supposed to step up and not show those biases. And whether that be in healthcare, whether that be in law enforcement, when you can't let those things impact the way that you do your job.
I think what we're kind of talking about is that value that we place on one another. And if we just really got to understand that everybody is valuable, not greater than or less than, but equal to. And unfortunately, right now, we don't value Black lives. We don't. We don't in our actions. We don't in our education. We don't really take the time to really understand the music, the culture, the food, you name it. And so I think if we can do a better job from an ally standpoint, from whatever it is that you want to, however the angle that you want to look at it, is to really place the value on the Black lives. If you can do that, you can be a great ally for me. You can be a great ally to each other. And that's really kind of my final thoughts really is that we really have to value Black life, and not just as a slogan or a statement, but as an action item. That's got to be action item number one, value. So that's my final comment. I mean, I can probably go on for a couple more hours on this. I'm enjoying the conversation. Thank you for the information. Thank you guys for sharing and pouring into me this evening. I appreciate it. I will take each nugget that I received from each and every one of you guys. You guys have all given me something I can kind of go back and reflect on this weekend, starting immediately, from even some of the music that I want to kind of dig into a little bit of Kendrick Lamar and some J. Cole to kind of get the rest of the evening going right. So I appreciate that. But thanks so much, guys. That's my final thoughts.
Yeah, this was a really great conversation. It's always, or a way that I choose to cope is talking to people who understand. It's just nice to be understood and heard, and just to have that community where it's like, I'm not crazy. Like, this stuff is like real, but like, it's also nice to talk to a community or a group that has hope, and like things are gonna get better, because I do find myself bogged down by pessimism during these times, but it's, it's nice to know that we're all working towards something greater and trying to achieve something better, and that there's something to look forward to in the future. So this was very dope. And Gabby, I just asked that when you edit this, perhaps if you could take a look at my forehead and just make sure that a light is not shining too bright on it, that would be great, babe. Thank you.
Going off of Nat, I also want to bring up the forehead thing, please and thank you. But also, there's no one policing the police. To go off of what Emma said, that bias, the fact that there isn't already a program placed into the policing program is kind of ridiculous at this point. But yeah, there's no one policing the police. We, the people, have to do that to some extent. Like, we have our cell phones, so we have to, we take our videos, we tweet and everything. like Nat said, we need to figure out what these laws are, what is protecting them so much, to create a culture that makes them actually believe and truly understand that our lives matter, but also what their job is.
I just wanted to say it was really nice hearing what everybody had to say. I also wanted to bring up, if you have any siblings, or you have cousins that are close to you, nieces, nephews, if you have children of your own, please, please, please have these conversations with them as well. A lot of people like to believe that kids don't know what's going on, but they most definitely do. And this is affecting them in a major way as well. I have 3 younger sisters, and I always try to find a way to just talk with them and make them feel comfortable and let them know, that it's a hard time, and I'm here for you, and I'm listening to you, and I'm going to educate you as well. So please make sure you do that. Especially, those of you that aren't of color, like, talk to your little cousins about it as well, because I believe that, kids are sponges. They gather everything, your behaviors, everything you do, how you react. They're going to do the same thing that you do. So I think if you tackle that right now, this is how we can also see change as well.
Yeah, Gabby, I just want to say thank you. Like everybody else has said, I just want to echo what everyone else said and say thank you for just opening up this space for us to talk and kind of like unload some. I guess like my final thoughts in thinking about like police and like, that's definitely like a big thing on the list of like things that we have like stacked against us, which is ridiculous. But I think we're seeing now that so many systems, and not even now that we're just not seeing, like we're really like now starting to do something about the systems that are truly broken in the sense that they were not meant to benefit us. Just like anything else, like for example, like if a machine is broken, you have to break it down sometimes and like start from scratch. So I'm fully ready for, if whatever needs to be broken down, just including this country. If it needs to crumble, let it crumble, and let's just move on from there.
Alrighty. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for just responding to this idea, responding to this this movement of conversation. I think it's happening now across so many tables, across so many platforms, that people are realizing that it takes beyond a post to understand someone and to really get what they're feeling and know what their experiences are. And so I really wanted to create this space so that we could get to the point where we can talk about our experiences, but we don't have to leave it there, that we can cope through those things, that we can find ways to heal through those things, and then we can take action and move forward in an effective way. So again, thank you so much for being honest with how you're feeling right now and being brave in this talk. Before we close out, I just want to welcome, if you guys have any resources, I know that everyone has been on top of just finding what's the best way to create change, whether it's a petition or donating to a foundation or an organization. If you have anything that you want to share, just put it in the group chat. And then I'm also going to share a folder of resources that my good friend Carissa Ramirez created. She couldn't be here tonight, but she put in a lot of effort to create this. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys for a second and show you the folder. One second. Okay. Can you guys still hear me though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm learning. Zoom is pretty cool. So this is her Black Lives Matter resource guide. So the first thing is just a lot of resources about, if you don't think this movement should exist or matters, then just take a look at these different things. It's a lot of Twitter threads, and I think a lot of us have been following through Twitter threads and learning a lot through Twitter threads. That's a tongue twister, oh my gosh. But just learning a lot about how to move forward and what should we be doing next. Let's go back. These are other threads and master links for places to donate or places to, go and petition. Okay, let's see. Next one. More threads and master links with similar information. I know specifically for the first one, it's like an email template for emailing your legislators and creating change in that form, which is really effective. But at the same time, be very careful because sometimes you'll get that email back saying that it did not go through because of the high volume of things. So just be, careful about that. Different organizations to donate to with money and without money, which I think is important because a lot of people can't give their money. And then those who do, they do, but we have to be realistic with, what we can do. Things about protests, a whole handbook about peaceful protests, helpful readings for preparation. I think that's been so important for people who are going out to protest thinking that things are going to be peaceful and then it turns violent. So it's just kind of how to protect yourself moving forward, especially with different groups being out there. We are in a pandemic right now, so with COVID and just protecting yourself that way, but even with white supremacy and other people who will be there and you'll think that they're a protester, but they're actually trying to disturb the peace. We've seen that a lot with undercover cops who go and they'll burn cars or they'll burn places, and we get the wrong depiction of that in social media with people saying that, oh, like these protesters aren't being peaceful, they want violence. It's not always the protesters who are doing that, and it's not always them, so we need to be realistic with that. Some different resources to read, such as books. I came across this Justice in June lesson plan where it goes over different things that you can do each day to, create change in a way that you're building on it each day. Books to read. And I know she would definitely welcome if anyone wanted to add to these lists, feel free to comment in the comment section, and I can definitely ask her to make this shareable and editable. But there's a lot of great books on here, especially The Hate You Give. It's just books that we read. We read stories, and some stories are fictional, and it's like, oh, those things don't happen in real life, and now we're realizing they really do. Short readings, leftist resource sheet, Twitter threads with books, and then lastly, to sign petitions. And different petitions to sign, different Twitter threads that have them, and pre-written emails as well. So let me see if I can figure out how to stop sharing. Here we go. But all in all, just want to reiterate just my gratefulness for you guys being here and wanting to be open to this opportunity and this growth opportunity for learning and for moving forward. Uncomfortable conversations are so important, and I think we're realizing that. And another thing that I wanted to close with was that I saw a quote about the year 2020 and how we've gone through every month so far with something new, something challenging, something scary. and something that makes us want to really cancel this year, whether it was Kobe Bryant passing away or COVID-19 or just this situation right now. I think we're waking up in 2020. I really think this was the year of wake up, of do something, of create change, of it's time to be different. So I'm excited for what we can accomplish next and how we're going to use our voices to create change. But thank you again, and I hope you all have a beautiful night.